The world of global trade today is different from what it was yesterday. The system, which has been anchored by the United States and relied upon by Canada since the end of World War II, is no longer what it once was. While this system has not been perfect, it has helped bring prosperity to our country for decades. However, this era has come to an end. The old relationship of steadily deepening integration between the United States and Canada is over. The 80-year period, during which the United States embraced the role of global economic leader, formed alliances based on trust and mutual respect, and championed the free and open exchange of goods and services, is now over. A major shift has just rocked the energy market. Canada, a major gas supplier to the United States, and Qatar, a key global player, have redirected their gas exports to Europe. Gas that once flowed to American buyers is now heading across the Atlantic. This isn't a minor adjustment. It's a tariff-driven shift that is disrupting global trade. The United States has relied on Canada for much of its gas imports, worth billions annually, helping to keep fuel prices steady. Qatar also sent large amounts to the US. However, now Europe is receiving the bulk of these exports through new deals signed rapidly. The introduction of US tariffs has increased costs for gas trades, prompting this shift. Quiet talk sealed the deal, leaving markets in shock. Gas prices in the US are approaching $5, and jobs are being affected. Europe's factories and homes are now receiving this redirected supply, while US buyers search for alternatives. From Canada's fields to Qatar's plants, trade routes are changing, driven by large sums of money and new plans. Why did these two countries pivot so dramatically? Tariffs played a role, but there's more to the story. Canada is changing its course due to US tariffs, which add extra costs to gas exports and eat into profits. As a result, Canada has looked for other markets. A massive new project in British Columbia produces millions of tons of gas annually. And instead of sending it to the US, most of it is now being shipped to Europe and Asia, including countries like Germany and Japan. The shift is clear. Canada used to send large amounts of gas to the US, but this has dropped significantly. Now, Europe has signed billion-dollar deals for a substantial portion, driven by their need for reliable fuel, and they're willing to pay more than the US, where tariffs have lowered margins. Canada's pipelines are now feeding ports built for overseas trade, not for American buyers. This makes sense because tariffs cost Canada millions, while Europe's demand for steady fuel offers more revenue. The US still receives some gas, but it's no longer the primary focus. Long-term contracts are locking in Europe's share, and Canada is pursuing more lucrative markets. Why has this shift happened so quickly? The answer is rooted in trade costs, which are reshaping energy flows. Qatar's rise in the global gas market is placing significant pressure on American exporters. With new production coming online, Qatar is offering competitive prices and flexible contracts, which appeal to buyers worldwide. Meanwhile, the US is facing tighter margins and more competition for buyers, especially as Canada and Qatar ramp up their exports. This evolving landscape is forcing American producers to rethink their strategies and is reshaping the entire energy market. Qatar's massive gas fields are producing millions of tons annually, up from previous years. With Europe as the primary target, Germany locked in large contracts. Italy followed, and more are in discussions. Qatar's gas is meeting a critical need in Europe by filling gaps in supply. The numbers make sense. Qatar's gas is cheaper than US options, especially with tariffs increasing American costs. Europe, which has lost other fuel suppliers, is desperate for reliable energy, and Qatar delivers without trade complications. Last year, the US had a strong share, but now Europe is receiving far more, with Qatar's exports climbing. This isn't just about supply. Qatar's deals extend for years, securing a significant portion of Europe's market. Their gas fields could produce even more soon, outpacing competitors. This is a strategic push to dominate the global gas trade. Qatar isn't just selling fuel, it's gaining market share. Why focus so intensely on Europe? There's a larger strategy at play, one that is reshaping global markets. The US is feeling the squeeze as gas exports to Europe have dropped, with Canada and Qatar redirecting millions of tons of gas elsewhere. US terminals, once busy, are now operating slower, leading to the loss of thousands of jobs in places like Texas. The economic fallout is affecting households across the US. Gas prices have risen to nearly $5 per gallon as supplies tighten. Canada's exports to the US have fallen, forcing more reliance on more expensive domestic sources. Factories that process gas are facing higher costs and passing those increases on to consumers. Grocery prices and utility bills are rising, and smaller businesses are struggling. The US had counted on Canada's steady flow and Qatar's extra supply, but Europe's new multi-billion-dollar contracts are locking in those supplies, leaving the US to compete in much tougher markets. Gas is no longer just fuel. It's tied to jobs and rising prices. Honestly, the stakes are rising. Why did suppliers change direction? Tariffs have altered the game, but the US is paying a steep price, and there's more to figure out. Tariffs and trade policies truly shape the global energy landscape, often in ways that are unexpected. When governments impose new fees or restrictions, it can shift the flow of goods, change who buys from whom, and even disrupt long-standing partnerships. These realities force countries and companies to rethink their strategies, always seeking the best deal in a constantly changing market. Tariffs turned things upside down. The United States added fees on Canadian goods, including gas, making deals less profitable. Qatar faced similar pressures. Both found better buyers in Europe and Asia, where prices beat those in the tariff-hit US markets. The impacts were sharp. Canada's gas exports to America shrank, losing millions in value. Qatar's shipments swung to Europe, where billion-dollar deals now dominate. Europe pays more than the United States, where tariffs cut into earnings. Canada even taxed US goods back, leveling the field. This wasn't a fluke. US tariffs aimed to shape trade, but they pushed suppliers away. Europe's need for gas lined up perfectly, and secret talks moved quickly. Something feels off. Did the US misjudge the fallout? Tariffs don't just cost money, they redirect trade. Canada and Qatar followed the cash, and the US is left sorting out a new reality. Europe's energy market is shifting. Losing a major supplier left a massive gap. Hundreds of billions of cubic meters gone. US gas helped before, but now Qatar and Canada are filling it. Germany relies on Qatar for a big chunk, while Canada supplies places like the Netherlands. The deals are huge. Billions in contracts tie Europe to Qatar's fields and Canada's projects. Some last a decade, showing serious commitment, but there's risk. Qatar's supply depends on calm markets, and Canada's pipelines face pushback from local groups. Europe had to act fast. With demand for gas staying high, they couldn't wait. The United States still sends some, but it's less now, and honestly, it's pricier. Qatar and Canada offer better rates and a steadier flow, so they're winning. The contracts. Europe's betting on new sources. How did Qatar and Canada step in so quickly? It's more than just need. There's a plan behind it. So here's the thing. Canada and Qatar really saw an opportunity and moved quickly. With Europe searching for reliable suppliers, Qatar used its massive reserves and existing infrastructure to ramp up deliveries. Meanwhile, Canada, with its easier, abundant resources, started shipping more gas overseas. Not just to Europe, but to Asia as well. Both countries are now shaping the global gas market, building influence, and yes, making a lot of money along the way. Canada's seeing green. New gas deals with Europe worth billions bring in serious money. Asia's buying too, like Japan, pushing Canada's gas earnings higher than ever. Coastal towns are thriving, with thousands of new jobs from pipelines to ports. The numbers work. US tariffs slashed profits on American deals, but Europe and Asia pay better. Canada's exports shifted less to the US, more across oceans. A big project in British Columbia pumps out gas for these new markets, with plans to grow even bigger. This isn't just luck. Canada's pipelines are built for global trade now. Not just the US, future deals could lock in Europe for decades. The US still buys some gas, but Canada's focused on richer buyers. Gas isn't just fuel, it's growth. Why go all in on Europe? Tariffs tip the scales, and Canada's making the most of it. Qatar's influence is growing. Supplying a big slice of Europe's gas makes them a key player. Their fields could pump out even more soon, topping other suppliers. But it's not just fuel. Qatar is building trade ties that reach further, from ports to new deals. So, Europe's contracts open doors. Countries like Italy are talking billions in trade beyond just gas, like shipping projects. And Asia's noticing. Deals with places like Japan are picking up. These links aren't just about energy, they're about shaping markets. And Qatar is gaining fast. The plan's sharp. Cheap gas gives Qatar an edge, but trade talks build bigger wins. Europe's huge demand hands them leverage. Other countries want in too. What's Qatar aiming for long term? Qatar's rewriting trade rules. Their gas deals started it, but the bigger picture came into focus. And it's not just about pumps now. America faces a new reality. The global energy game is shifting, and options are narrowing. As Qatar and Europe build stronger ties, the United States has to rethink its own strategies. It's not just about competing on price. It's about influence now, partnerships, and adapting well to a world where old rules don't always apply. The United States isn't down yet. Losing Canada and Qatar's gas hurts. But there are options. Domestic fields like shale deposits could ramp up, though honestly, it's costly. Exports to Europe fell, so Asia's markets like South Korea look tempting despite some pretty stiff competition. Gas prices at $5 sting, and thousands of jobs are gone. Factories pay more for fuel, pushing up costs for everyone. But, new tech could lower drilling costs soon. Adding supply. Smaller deals with other countries might help though. They're pricier than Canada's old rates. The shift caught America off guard. Tariffs meant to steer trade sent gas elsewhere, and now buyers face tighter budgets. Still, the United States has gas to sell. It's about finding the right markets, adapt, or struggle. That's the choice. Why did tariffs backfire so hard? The United States is digging for answers, and time's ticking. The gas market's different now. Qatar's billion-dollar deals lock in Europe, boosting their trade clout. Canada's new contracts add thousands of jobs, fueling growth. Europe gets steady gas, but leaning on Qatar and Canada could mean trouble if supplies wobble. Prices might jump. The United States took a hit. Exports shrank, costs rose, and jobs vanished. Gas at $5 hurts, but there's room to pivot. Asia could buy more if deals line up. Canada's pipelines face delays, and Qatar's fields aren't risk-free. Everyone's playing a high-stakes game. This goes beyond fuel. Qatar and Canada grabbed a chance, while the United States recalibrated. Trade's about who moves fastest, and new leaders are stepping up. Is there a hidden angle to this shift? Gas rewrites the rules. Qatar and Canada are winning now, but markets never stay still, and the next twist is coming. So, Europe is placing a huge bet on both Qatar and Canada right now. Their gas, really we're talking about millions of tons, every single year, keeps European factories humming and homes nice and warm. These billion-dollar deals are supposed to guarantee a steady supply, but honestly, it's not a perfect system. If global trade hits a rough patch, Qatar's supply could suddenly falter. And over in Canada, well, their projects sometimes run into delays because of local disputes. Europe's all in on Qatar and Canada. Their gas, millions of tons yearly, keeps factories running and homes warm. Billion-dollar deals ensure steady flow, but it's not perfect. Qatar's supply could falter if global trade gets messy, and Canada's projects hit snags from local disputes. The payoff's big. Europe cut its dependence on other sources, and prices are stable for now. Qatar's cheap rates and Canada's reliability beat US options, which cost more after tariffs. But if one supplier stumbles, Europe might face shortages, spiking costs across the board. This wasn't just about fuel. Europe needed partners fast, and Qatar and Canada delivered. The United States lost ground, unable to match the deals. So, what's the catch? Can Europe trust? This new setup, risks loom, but so do gains. Europe's gas bet is bold, and it's really changing how trade flows. With surprises still possible, Canada's not just a neighbor anymore. Gas deals with Europe and Asia, worth billions, have put it on the world stage. Projects pumping out millions of tons yearly aim for buyers far beyond America. Towns near gas fields are growing, with new jobs and cash flowing in. The United States' tariffs push Canada to diversify. Europe pays better, and Asia's demand just keeps rising. Exports to the United States dropped, but global markets more than make up for it. Canada's planning bigger projects, eyeing decades of trade with new partners. So this shift is definitely strategic. Canada's pipelines and ports, they're built for the long haul, not just for those short US routes. The US still buys gas, sure, but it's honestly a much smaller piece now. You might wonder why go global so quickly. Well, Canada is really seizing the moment here. Tariffs open the door, and they're just running right through it, building a gas trade that's honestly hard to ignore. For the United States, this is a real turning point. The landscape is changing, and the decisions made now will shape the future of energy for both countries and for the world. As Canada looks outward, the US faces new choices and new challenges. The story of North American energy is far from over. In fact, it's just entering a whole new chapter. America's at a turning point. Its own gas fields could grow, but scaling up takes years. Cutting tariffs might bring Canada's supply back. But those talks just drag on. Qatar's deals with Europe are locked tight, and Asia's markets are, pretty crowded. Gas prices might hit $6 if nothing changes. Qatar could grab even more of Europe's demand, and Canada's exports